Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts, the host of the Whole Athlete Podcast, and today I have another new guest coming on the show next. That is someone that started a new product called Restore for Life. I heard about this product a couple years ago when I was in nutritional therapy practitioner school program, and people were all talking about this product, Restore, to help your gut health. And I was at Expo West Natural Products Show a couple months ago, and my husband yells in the food industry, and down that aisle was Restore. And I walked by their table, I think at least 20 times in 2 days. And I was so fascinated by their information. So I was fortunate to schedule a time with the founder of Restore. His name's Dr. Zach Bush. And we're going to have a quick talk. We ran out of time, but there's a lot to go into here on what Restore is about. So I want to give you a little overview. First of all, Zach is a medical doctor. He's a triple board certified physician. He's one of the few in the country. His expertise in internal medicine, endocrinology, and metabolism, and hospice, palliative care, actually. Never heard of that one. But I heard hospice care. It's pretty cool. He's pretty impressive. The breakthrough science that Dr. Zach and his colleagues have delivered offers profound new insights into human health and longevity. In 2012, he discovered a family of carbon-based redox molecules made by bacteria, and his team has demonstrated that in the cellular communication network functions as an antidote to glyphosate and many other dietary, chemical, and pharmaceutical toxins that disrupt our body's natural defense systems. This science has resulted in a revolutionary class of dietary supplements, including the product Restore that we'll talk about today a little bit. Dr. Zach points to his kids as the driving force behind his passion for change. He's fiercely motivated by a desire to have them experience a much brighter and healthier future. His educational efforts provide the grassroots foundation for which we can launch change in our legislative decisions, ultimately upshifting consumer behavior to bring about radical change in the mega industries of big farming, big pharma, and Western medicine at large. So I love the information that they have. You can go to his website, zachbushmd.com, and he gave us some other links on his videos and educational that we'll share in the podcast show notes. So if you go to thewholeathletepodcast.com, you can find all our episodes and show notes to go with it. The Whole Athlete Podcast is also on every week on YouTube. If you go find the Whole Athlete Podcast, you can find the video version so you can see me and see my guest who I'm talking to. It's a little more fun for us. And then on social media. So just let give you a little overview of Restore before we bring him on the show, because he only had a little bit of time and I wanted to get the 25 minutes that we had. So Restore is a unique dietary supplement that supplies the first line of defense against everyday exposures to environmental and foodborne factors. Restore creates an optimal environment or ecology in the gut membrane for good gut bacteria to flourish. Good gut flora protect our immune system and maintain our health. Restore was developed by scientists trained at some of the most prestigious universities in the country, such as the University of Virginia, Duke University, and the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. It is scientifically proven, soil-driven mineral supplement designed to support the protection of our intestinal walls. If you go to my website, debbiepotts.net, or the fitnessforwardstudio.com/blog, you'll find lots of blog posts I've done over the last few years about what is leaky gut, what is gut health, and all to do with nutritional therapy and the holistic method. So I've been trying to write a few times a week, and leaky gut is one I just posted. So what does Restore do for you? 70% of our immune system is your gut. And I tell that to people, I think, every day, because I think so many people are sick and get these colds throughout the winter, fall season, and spring allergies, and they don't realize that your gut is 70% your immune system. I said that backwards. Your immune system is in your gut, 70% in your gut. So the clinical experience, in addition to the cell culture studies, support the theory that Restore's proprietary formula creates an optimal environment in the gut to allow between 20,000 to 30,000 different strains of good gut bacteria or gut flora to work together as Mother Nature intended to maintain our health. So we'll go into it more, but you take Restore, you take 1 teaspoon 3 times per day, 30 minutes ideally before a meal. And you can increase up to 1 tablespoon 3 times a day to support health goals. But they say 3 teaspoons is adequate for most individuals. So for the next month, I'm going to take this supplement and test it out myself. I know a lot of the symptoms I have related to leaky gut because stress, living life as a race for so many years and racing a lot does impact your gut health. So you might want to address your gut health, adding that good supplement of Restore. And also we'll get into the show today talking about fermented foods and get more fermented foods for your probiotics than taking more pills. So restoring that gut health also involves removing those irritant foods that we do in my Holistic Method 30-Day Challenge. We take out the common inflammatory foods that you probably already know: gluten, grains, soy, eggs for a lot of people, commercial dairy, and peanuts, corn, I think I already said soy, processed foods. So we take out those foods, remove them, and then heal your gut with good healing foods as we do bone broth, green drinks, and lots of probiotic-rich foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, and he'll list some different ones in the show today. And then taking some supplements as Restore for the 30 days or more. So he's been taking it for many years, but I'm going to test it out and see if I can feel even better. So what is Restore? There's more information on Restore, the number 4, and Life. So let's talk to Dr. Zach Bush. Their website has a ton of videos and information. The solution to toxic overload, more about your body's first line of defense is in your gut. And the microbiome, we're going to talk a lot about this next month with some other people about the gut biome and talking about the answers to toxins. We've been talking a lot about toxins in our environment, the foods that we're having. So go to my website, fitnessforwardstudio.com or debbiepotts.net, and you can get a free new book that should be out soon on toxins and how to detoxify your life from the inside and out. So let's bring on Dr. Zach Bush and get your notepads out. He says tons of good information in just a 20-something minute time frame, but you might want to listen to this a few times. And let's order the product. I'll try to get a code, The Whole Athlete, so you can order it from them and get a discount for listening to the show. Thanks. Give me your questions on the Whole Athlete podcast page or just email me and I'll get back to you. Thanks. Enjoy. Hey guys, I've got an exciting topic to go into today for the athlete, how to improve your performance. And as we talk about nutritional therapy for the whole athlete is really important. And I met with people behind Restore for Life, and the founder, Dr. Zach Bush, is on the line today. Hi, Zach.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be with you all.
Well, let's I know we've got a lot to talk about, but I want to go into what Restore is and how it can help improve performance for an endurance athlete, triathletes. They're really pushing their body hard, living life as a race and trying to pack too much into a day. So talk about what you do.
Absolutely. So my background is internal medicine and endocrinology and metabolism, which is looking at the way in which hormones regulate the way you produce fuel. So as an athlete, there's few subspecialties of medicine that would be more relevant to your efforts. Metabolism is around this issue of burning glucose as sugar or fatty acids from fat storage into adenosine triphosphate, which is the muscle fuel that you're running on in a race. And it's also the fuel, of course, your brain's using to make those snap-second decisions either at the spinal cord or at the brain itself. And so ATP and its production from the mitochondria, which are non-human little entities, they look like bacteria, they live inside your cells, and they're responsible for all of this digestion into usable fuel. The byproduct of those guys is redox molecules. These guys are little oxygen-hydrogen combinations that are responsible for the transfer of electrons through space and time to coordinate repair after injury. And when you're an athlete at your level, you're going to experience injury even when you run down a set of stairs without much exertion. But on the other hand, if you're doing a triathlon, you're going to end up with billions of microfractures in the bone from running impact over a couple hours time or whatever it is. And you're doing this injury that is necessitating this big repair response. And so that, in a nutshell, is kind of my background of endocrinology, the hormones that would be related in muscle metabolism, and how that metabolism is going to regulate your repair process. One of the biggest turning points of my career was start to turn my attention to the regulation of fuel and its transfer across membranes. So these big macro structures like your gut membrane and the blood vessel membranes are responsible for a couple of key features. One of these, of course, is nutrient transfer. So you got to get your sources of glucose and fats across the membranes to the mitochondria eventually. But you also need to do proteins, which are, of course, the building blocks, and those are really regulated and in reflection with the fiber in the food. So you have all these big macronutrients that are competing for transfer across these large tissue membranes. Finally, the most important turning point for you as an athlete in your capacity for endurance is going to be hydration. Your ability to get water inside the cell is not only your endurance on the track, it's also your endurance in regard to longevity. And so your length of life is going to be directly tied to the ability to get water inside your cells. And this is a brand new field, really. We've spent a lot of time understanding how to drink electrolytes and all your ultimate hydration efforts. But those are not just to get water inside your body, it's to get the water from the vascular compartment or the extracellular environment inside the cell. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of this downstream environment of where our dietary supplement line, Restore, is coming into play big time for athletes. The phenomenon of our stress that we've developed as a population in regard to our nutritional stressors, the chemicals in our food chain, namely, are boiled down to chemicals like glyphosate, which is the most common herbicide or weed killer in our environment. We dump about 4.5 billion pounds of glyphosate into the environment every year. This makes it the #1 toxin on the planet. And we've demonstrated in our labs over the last 6 years that this molecule, this glyphosate compound, disrupts the Velcro junctions or the tight junctions that tie your gut membrane and vascular membranes into coherent, intelligent structures. And so because now 75% of the air we breathe, 75% of the rainfall in our country is contaminated with glyphosate, we're all leaking all the time. And so the effort to get water inside your body is now challenged by the effect that as your gut membrane breaks down, you can't traffic water inside the body. And once it's there, you can't traffic it across a blood vessel into an extracellular matrix or across the cell membrane into the cell or from the cell into the mitochondria. And so we have all these barrier systems that need to be coherent, intelligent traffickers of water, and they're starting to leak, which means as soon as you try to pass water, it can cross right back into the other compartment. And so we're turning into kind of more of a sieve than a compartmentalized intelligent system. So that, in a kind of broad brushstrokes, is your relationship between gut lining, vascular lining, cell lining, and the mitochondria, and your ability to hydrate.
I would think a lot of endurance athletes really damage their gut wall lining from years of training and burning sugar and taking all those goos and bars and all those sugary drinks, that the stress on top of that really must impact the gut. I don't think a lot of endurance competitive athletes take care of their gut, which is why I wanted you on the show today, because I think this is a great talk about what the product is and how you use it and how it can improve someone's gut health and how that actually improves your performance.
Great. So what is the definition of gut health? The definition is twofold as we understand it. #1 is ecosystem. You need a vast population of bacteria, fungi, parasites, viruses, all teaming together to keep a balanced ecosystem, something like a rainforest with hundreds of thousands of species kind of communicating and keeping in balance. Something like a biodynamic garden that doesn't need all the weed killers because the healthy plants are checking the growth of weeds, and the healthy soil with the mycelium and the fungi are checking the distribution of nutrient across that environment. So it doesn't really matter if we're talking about macro structures like a coral reef or an organic garden or your gut. It all is going to come down to this incredible coordination of biodiversity. That's what we discovered in 2012 that would become the product Restore. What we found in 2012 is these carbon molecules that have the ability to do the redox signaling that I mentioned from the mitochondria in the extracellular environment. And this was a huge leap forward because up until this time, we really thought that this communication network, this wireless network of communication, was limited to the inside of the cell. And so from that model, the mitochondria and the human nucleus and the genome of the human are always trying to do damage repair, but from the inside out. Now suddenly we got support of the outside environment from the bacteria and the fungi coordinating with the inside. So we found these carbon molecules that are made, each species making a slightly different variant of these, like carbon snowflakes is what we call them in the lab, because the bacteria in each species make us a different variant of these carbon molecules. The fungi make different variants and all of their different variations. So we have millions of variants of these carbon molecules, all of which can coordinate into what looks like a liquid circuit board, if you will, where you can get electrons transferring through the extracellular matrix to coordinate everything from nutrient delivery to deep hydration of the cells to detox of the cells. And so that's what we discovered with Restore. It's not so important about putting bacteria in the gut with a probiotic. A probiotic previously was kind of like one of our big tools for gut health. But a probiotic is 3 species or 5 species of bacteria that you keep introducing in massive number, 35 billion copies of the same bacteria over and over again. You take that every day, you get a monoculture, not a diverse ecosystem. Restore is the first gut health supplement that's helping coordinate the ecosystem, not by micromanaging a few species of bacteria, but instead just give back the communication network, get the cell phones all working, and get all of these species interconnecting again. And what we find, just like penicillin, which was the first antibiotic discovered, that's made by mold, bread mold. So mold is checking the growth of bacteria. Bacteria will check the growth of mold. Both of those will check the growth of viruses. Parasites will have an interaction with all 3. And so what we see with Restore is let's stop trying to micromanage what we think the environment should look like and let the environment return to a balance that it can govern itself.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to do because we keep talking about toxic overload and the stuff, sugar, we already talked about processed foods, but our environment is so toxic, but also we have this internal toxicity that we're not addressing, and how to restore and rebuild your gut health to help that. Is that, I think you constantly need to do that. Do we need to take a supplement as this every day? Is it because it's ongoing stress for going from on the outside and inside of our bodies?
Yeah, at this stage of our nutrient environment, we're looking at daily intake of this compound. I've been on it longest. I discovered the family of molecules, and we started making the first bottles of this back in 2012. So I've been on it for 6 years. And if I go for 3 days without it, I know I can tell the difference. I'll be a little more achy in the mornings. My endurance will drop. My heart rate variability is not as good. So I can see change in my own physiology just with a few days without this, even though I've been on it for 6 years. And the reason is multiple. Number one, the compound is relatively short-lived. It's going to travel through your system, communicate over the course of hours, which is an extraordinarily long time compared to the previous realm of mitochondrial redox molecules. To give you an idea of how long those guys last, it's somewhere around 1/1,000,000th of a second. So if a mitochondria puts out a redox molecule of oxygen and hydrogen combinations, it will be transfer an electron and be done in 1/1,000,000th of a second. In the quantum physics world, that's actually quite a long period of time, and you can do a lot of cool things at the biochemistry level with 1/1,000,000th of a second. But now picture this carbon backbone that can carry a molecule stably through the system before it's cleared in the stool or cleared in the urine. And that carbon redox system will carry that potential of electron exchange through the entire human body before it's excreted in the urine or stool. And so we get this long biologic half-life of electron communication through Restore, which you're not going to get through a mitochondrial redox supplement or redox molecule.
So you mentioned a couple things that we talk a lot about lately, and over the years I've had this podcast since 2013, and heart rate variability, testing that each day. And there's other ways to know that is this doing something to me rather than having to do lab tests or a little more work. But what are some things, as you said, HRV testing, people can monitor to know, am I getting better when I'm taking Restore every day for life? And is it, what other things can we do to see people need that biofeedback or some type of check-in to see if it's worth it?
So most of us are walking around, and when I say most, I'm saying about 95% of us are walking around with some symptom of chronic inflammation. And that might be minor, like postnasal drainage is one of the most common. Yeah. So about 80% of the population says, oh yeah, I do have some postnasal drainage, which I cough in the morning and clear my throat, and some congestion that dripped down my back, my throat overnight, that kind of thing. So whether it's postnasal drainage in the sinuses, or esophageal reflux, or a little bit of achiness in the morning, kind of a reactive arthritis that resolves itself in 5 or 10 minutes of moving around in the morning. These are very common symptoms that the majority of us can point to. And so one of the tools that you can use is kind of your own biologic assay to say, oh yeah, my sleep quality improved, my daytime energy improved, I had less 2 p.m. in the afternoon crashes that required me to go down a bunch of chocolate and caffeine. These are the kind of subtle markers of inflammation resolving. But if you're an extreme athlete, you already have some measures that you can track. Many of you are tracking things like VO2 max. VO2 max can improve with that hydration status over the course of a couple weeks on Restore and things like that. Heart rate variability being one. Fasting glucose levels, all of these kind of biohacking techniques that are being used by a lot of you out there are powerful tools to regulate. One that you may not be using right now that we use in my clinic all the time is something called the phase angle. RJL is the company that builds the little device that can measure the phase angle, and it's about $1,200. So if you're just an individual consumer, maybe that's not worth it. But if you're a professional athlete, this would be something you might want to look into, because it's the best tool we have at looking at intracellular hydration. And you mentioned the toxicity buildup that we're all facing. When you exercise, the main toxin that you really face is lactic acid. If you're not neutralizing lactic acid and clearing that through hydration, you're going to have stiff muscles and slow exercise recovery time based on that dehydrated state. And so a phase angle is a really nice measure using an impedance monitor, similar to what you do when you get an EKG. But instead of looking at just the heart, it looks at the whole body and says, here's the impedance or resistance quality and the resulting hydration status of the body. And so you can see that hydration score improve over time on Restore. And so those are some tools that you can use. Keep in mind, the phase angle changes very slowly. It's very hard to actually improve your total body impedance. And so it's going to take you a few months and typically to see that number rising with Restore.
Yeah, well, I just asked that because I found I just started using a sunlight and infrared full spectrum therapy treatment at my fitness studio. And there's some people that just want to know, how do I know if it's working? And I think, it's simple. You can get all the lab tests to see if your numbers are better. But I think generally you just feel better. And as you say, it helps gut health, respiratory wellness, environmental exposures. You can combat more and protect or promote immune function, enhance mental clarity. And you don't always know those things. Maybe you have less brain fog, that kind of stuff you might be able to tell. But it's, people like to know if it's working or not, if it's worth it. But I think athletes that are competitive are all that type A personality on the go all the time, that we're always looking for the extra edge. And that's why I switched this podcast to talk about more nutritional therapy for athletes, that you got to look at, are you performing well at a cellular level? And mitochondria you mentioned, and that's what we talk about a lot too lately. I think the mitochondria is a big word lately on how to improve the function of the cell and the mitochondria.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, the mitochondrial lifespan, it can be quite short. They reproduce inside your cells, regardless of your cellular reproduction. And so to get these guys to reproduce, you need this redox signaling environment supported by the hydration, as well as kind of the stress signals going to those mitochondria. What we've shown that's very interesting is you take Restore, which is a sterile compound, just the communication network made by the bacteria and the fungi, put that into a human cellular environment, and you see the mitochondria within those cells change their behavior within minutes, not hours, not days like we used to believe was necessary, but within minutes, we see this communication network affecting the mitochondria. And the effects that we see are profound for the athlete. Number one, we see a massive increase in the endogenous or internal production of glutathione. Glutathione is the main antioxidant. 85% of your total reservoir of antioxidant in your body is glutathione. You produce that. It's not something you eat. There's supplements of glutathione now and stuff like that. Those last seconds in the bloodstream. Here we see an endogenous production of glutathione increased by 800% in human cells when exposed to the bacterial communication network. Yeah. In the same way, we see stress of the reactive oxygen species coming out of the mitochondria decrease within minutes of exposure of this communication network. And so in all these different ways, we see the checks and balances, the microbiome communicating directly to this intracellular environment of the human cell to improve not only detox and, kind of exercise recovery, but also this deep hydration and mitochondrial stress.
Yeah, it seems keywords, the mitochondria, cell health, and the hydration of our cells. So cellular health is key for performance, and that's what we're built upon. I think people forget we kind of work on the surface stuff, but really to improve performance and health and to optimize our health is working from the deep inside, which are the cells. So lastly, you say Restore is not a probiotic. Do we take probiotics as well, or we're just good just taking Restore?
In general, we taper people off of probiotics, the rationale being that you're creating this monoculture if you're chronically on a probiotic. A lot of my patients are, drink and eat fermented foods, which I'm a huge fan of. Yeah. So rather than spending your money on, a narrow spectrum of probiotic, I'd recommend you switch over to a wild fermentation product. And so a wild fermented sauerkraut, sour Reuben, which is made from turnips, kvass, which is made from the beets, the kimchi, the classic Korean dish there. All of these age-old compounds. From the Japan, it'd be the miso soup. And so these fermented foods are super powerful in bringing massive ecodiversity back to the gut that you're not going to get from a probiotic. So we use fermented foods in conjunction with Restore as kind of our front line for every single human.
Great. And where people can order it now? Just go through Restore.
Sure. The website's www.restore4life.com. Restoreforlife.com. If you want more lectures and a lot more data on the science side, you can go to my website, which is Zach Bush MD. It's just an educational website. You can also just go to YouTube and search Zach Bush MD, and many dozens of hours of content will come up. If you want more on kind of the nutrition and its relationship to our gut lining, the documentary series called GMO Revealed is available online. GMOrevealed.com, I think, will get you to that documentary film. It's over 22 hours of content. So if you really want to geek out with us, you're welcome to.
A fun weekend ahead.
That's right.
22 hours of gut health. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And we will add all the details into the show notes and links so we can learn more, because there is so much to learn. I did nutritional therapy practitioner school 2 years ago almost, and it's just this ongoing, there's so much you have to keep learning and helping fuel the brain and the gut. And it's exciting stuff that you have to keep updated because new stuff keeps coming out. So thanks for educating us.
I love it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.